AITA for refusing to help my brother financially, even though he's my only family left. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older brother, Mark, 38M. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but there was a lot of tension because Mark had a habit of making poor financial decisions and then asking for help, while I've always been very disciplined with money. Our parents passed away when I was 19 and Mark was 25, which left me as his closest family. Over the years, I've tried to support him in various ways, but I also drew firm boundaries because he's a very impulsive person. About 2 years ago, Mark lost his job at a mid-level corporate position. It wasn't the first time he had struggled financially, but this time things were worse. He had very little savings, a mountain of credit card debt, and had been living paycheck to paycheck even before getting laid off. He called me in a panic one night and asked if I could loan him $10,000 to cover rent, car payments, and other bills. I was shocked. That amount was not something I could casually give him. And frankly, I was frustrated because he hadn't done anything to plan for emergencies. I told him I couldn't give him that much money, but I would help him brainstorm options like government assistance, temp jobs, and budgeting plans. He was furious and accused me of not being a real sister and abandoning him when he needed me most. We didn't speak for several weeks. Eventually, he cooled down and I thought things were okay again. Fast forward to now. Mark has been living with a girlfriend who works full-time, and they split the rent, but he is still constantly broke. He calls me almost weekly asking for money, sometimes just a couple $100s, sometimes larger sums. Each time, I politely decline and offer advice instead. He always reacts badly, telling me I'm selfish, and saying things like, "You're the only family I have," or "I thought family was supposed to help each other." Last month, things escalated. Mark's car broke down, and he asked me for $1,500 to fix it. I told him I couldn't help him financially and reminded him that he needs to be more responsible. He blew up on me, saying that I should step up and that I'm abandoning him, and then he hung up. Later that evening, he texted our extended family, complaining that I refused to help him and painting me as heartless. Several relatives called me to ask what was going on, and I told them the truth. I can't support his lifestyle, and I have my own financial responsibilities. Some sided with him, saying I should help him as family, and others understood my perspective. What complicates matters is that I do actually help him in non-financial ways. I drive him to interviews, help him with resumes, and offer advice on budgeting, but I refuse to give him money because I've learned over the years that every time I do, it just prolongs his cycle of irresponsibility. He has a history of making promises to pay me back that never materialize, and I have no confidence that this would change. Mark has started avoiding me now and makes passive-aggressive comments at family gatherings. A few people have told me that I need to forgive him and help him get back on his feet, while others have told me I'm right to set boundaries. I'm beginning to feel guilty because he has no one else, and he's getting resentful. I also worry about how our family will view me long-term. But at the same time, I feel strongly that helping him financially would just hurt both of us in the long run because it enables bad habits. AITA for refusing to financially support my brother, even though he's my only family left. I feel like I'm stuck between doing what I believe is responsible and being seen as cruel by others. I've considered giving him a small, manageable amount just once, but I'm worried that it will open the floodgates and undo all the boundaries I've set. I also don't want our relationship to be defined solely by money, but he seems unable to separate the two. I've tried explaining my reasons calmly and logically, but he interprets it as rejection. I genuinely care about him and want him to succeed, but I also can't sacrifice my own stability for his mistakes. I'm at a point where I feel like no matter what I do, either I'm seen as a villain or I'm enabling destructive behavior. I can't decide if I'm doing the right thing by standing my ground or if I should just give in to avoid family drama. Every decision seems to have serious consequences for our relationship and for how other family members view me. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my adult son move back home after he quit his job, which caused a massive family conflict. I, 44F, have a son, Jason, 22M, who has always been intelligent but extremely impulsive. He finished college last year and started working at a tech startup, which he initially enjoyed. Over the past few months, however, he became unhappy with his job and started complaining constantly about management, his responsibilities, and the work environment. Despite encouragement to find constructive ways to handle his dissatisfaction, he decided to quit without having another job lined up. A few days after quitting, Jason called me, upset and panicked, asking if he could move back home. My husband, Daniel, 46M, and I have two younger children, ages 8 and 5, and a structured household with routines and responsibilities. We also have a limited living space, and adding an adult who has no income and no immediate plan to find a job would significantly disrupt our household. I immediately felt uneasy about the idea, but I wanted to help him in practical ways. I told Jason that he could not move back impermanently, but I offered alternatives. I could help him find temporary housing, contribute to a short-term rental, help him update his resume, and assist with job applications. I also offered financial guidance to help him budget for living independently until he found a new position. Jason was extremely upset, insisting that moving back home was the only reasonable solution. He argued that I should prioritize family over convenience and that refusing him support was cruel. The situation escalated when Jason called my parents. They immediately sided with him, saying I should let him move in and that I was being unkind. I explained that I was not refusing to help. I was offering support that would actually help him regain independence without disrupting our household or putting additional stress on my younger children. I reminded them that Jason had a history of expecting family to accommodate him whenever he faced challenges, and that allowing him to move back in could create long-term dependency. My parents accused me of being cold and selfish, claiming I was prioritizing my comfort over family loyalty. The breaking point occurred at a family gathering a few days later. Jason and my parents confronted me directly. Jason shouted that I was being controlling and unsupportive, claiming I was punishing him for making adult choices. My parents backed him up, saying I needed to show compassion and that family should be unconditional. Daniel tried to intervene, pointing out that having an adult move into our house under these circumstances would create tension and disrupt our children's routines. Jason dismissed his concerns and accused me of being unreasonable. Some extended family members tried to mediate. They suggested compromises, such as letting Jason stay in a spare bedroom for a short period. But I explained that even a temporary stay could easily extend indefinitely based on past experience and could create ongoing conflict. I offered alternative support, like paying for temporary housing and helping him apply to jobs, but Jason refused all options that did not involve moving in with us. After the confrontation, Jason left angrily and has since communicated mostly through texts, often passive-aggressive. My parents are upset and continue to tell me that I should reconsider, suggesting I'm failing as a parent and damaging my relationship with my son. Some extended relatives sympathize with my position, recognizing the potential problems of having Jason move in, while others criticize me for not doing enough to help him. Family gatherings have become tense because of the ongoing dispute. I've considered allowing him to stay for a night or two while arranging temporary housing, but I know from past experience that short-term stays often turn into weeks or months and create unnecessary stress. I also worry that allowing him to move in without a plan would reinforce a pattern of dependency and prevent him from learning responsibility. I want to support him, but I cannot compromise the stability and well-being of my household and children. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I acted responsibly, prioritizing my family's stability while still offering practical ways to help Jason. On the other hand, the decision has caused significant strain with my parents and my son, leaving me feeling guilty and questioning if there was a better way to handle it. I have tried to provide support without compromising my household, but my efforts were rejected and interpreted as coldness. So, AITA for refusing to let my adult son move back in after quitting his job. Even though it caused a massive family conflict, and upset my parents. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of tension that she refuses to acknowledge. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Jenna, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child, outgoing, charming, and seemingly perfect in our parents' eyes. I was the introverted one, often anxious and struggling with self-esteem issues. Our parents unintentionally reinforced the dynamic by constantly comparing me to her, celebrating her achievements while overlooking mine. I developed a sense of resentment early on, though I tried to keep it under wraps because I loved her despite everything. Over the years, my resentment grew. Jenna has always had a sharp tongue and a knack for making passive-aggressive comments that hit where it hurts. A small example. During my college graduation, she congratulated me by saying, "It's cute you finished, I guess," after my parents praised me. She's done things like this repeatedly, always disguised as jokes, which makes it hard for me to confront her without being accused of overreacting. I've tried to talk to her about these incidents multiple times, only to have her laugh them off or twist the conversation to make me seem sensitive. About 5 years ago, things escalated. I was going through a rough patch, unemployed for a few months and dealing with depression. I confided in Jenna, hoping she might offer support. Instead, she told me I was overreacting and that I should get over it like everyone else does. She then shared my personal struggles with our extended family, as if it were gossip, which humiliated me. That incident left a lasting mark on me, and I began to distance myself emotionally from her. Despite this, I maintained appearances for family events because I didn't want to cause drama, and part of me hoped things would improve. But each encounter seemed to confirm that Jenna doesn't respect my boundaries or emotions. She would make jokes about my appearance, my job, my relationships, comments that our parents dismiss as sibling teasing, but that deeply hurt me. I realized I couldn't have a healthy relationship with her as long as these behaviors continued unchecked. Fast forward to last year, Jenna got engaged. When she announced it, I was happy for her, but my excitement was tinged with anxiety. I feared that the wedding would become another stage for her to humiliate me or dismiss my feelings. I tried to set boundaries early, telling her I would attend only if the wedding planning remained respectful and free from comments or comparisons. She assured me she understood and promised there would be no issues. Unfortunately, as the wedding planning progressed, she started making subtle digs again. She insisted I sit at the kids' table during the rehearsal dinner because it'll be more fun, despite the fact that I'm well into adulthood and not a child. She repeatedly brought up my single status around our family, saying things like, "Maybe next time you'll bring a date," in a way that made me feel like a joke. I attempted to address these issues calmly and privately, but she brushed them off, claiming I was reading too much into it and that I should lighten up. The final straw came when she sent me the seating chart for the wedding. She had placed me at a table with distant relatives I barely know and whom I've had awkward interactions with, while giving prime tables to people she explicitly told me were less close to her. I confronted her about it, explaining that I felt excluded and disrespected. She told me that I was being dramatic and that it's just a table, and that I needed to stop making everything about myself. At that point, I realized she has no intention of acknowledging my feelings or treating me as an equal. After weeks of agonizing over it, I made the difficult decision not to attend the wedding. I sent a message explaining my absence, emphasizing that it wasn't about her fiancé or the wedding itself, but about my long-standing boundary issues and the way I've been treated over the years. I offered to meet her privately after the wedding to reconcile if she wanted, but I made it clear that my mental health and self-respect come first. The response I got from my family has been mixed. My parents are upset, saying that I'm causing unnecessary drama and ruining Jenna's special day. They argue that families should forgive and forget, and that I'm overreacting by letting past grievances dictate the present. My cousins and some extended family members are sympathetic, understanding my perspective, and saying they've witnessed some of the passive-aggressive behavior firsthand. Jenna, unsurprisingly, is furious. She called me selfish, saying I'm choosing to punish her for nothing, and that my absence is humiliating her in front of everyone. She hasn't responded to my offer to meet after the wedding. I'm still conflicted because part of me feels guilty for missing such an important family event, but another part of me feels empowered for setting a boundary I've desperately needed for years. I don't take joy in the idea of skipping her wedding, but I also can't pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I've tried to maintain a relationship with Jenna for years, but it always seems to be at the expense of my own emotional well-being. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of being treated poorly and dismissed by her. I want to protect myself, but I'm aware that family will see this as unforgivable and dramatic. I'm struggling to reconcile the love I have for my family with the need to respect my own boundaries. I'm also trying to figure out if there's a way to preserve any semblance of a relationship with Jenna without compromising my mental health, or if this might be the point of no return. This situation has left me feeling both liberated and deeply sad, and I keep replaying conversations in my head, wondering if I'm being too rigid or if standing my ground is truly justified. The tension in my family is now palpable. Every family gathering has become a minefield of awkward glances and whispered opinions. I've started therapy to navigate my emotions, and I'm learning to accept that it's okay to prioritize my own mental health, even if others label me as dramatic or selfish. Still, the thought of permanently fracturing the relationship with my sister is heartbreaking, and I'm trying to reconcile the idea that loving someone sometimes means keeping a safe distance. So, AITA for putting my mental health and emotional boundaries above attending my sister's wedding, even knowing it will upset my family and possibly end our relationship. AITA for confronting my sister over her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family rift. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing clothes, secrets, and even friends. I have 2 children, a 6-year-old daughter, Lily, and a 4-year-old son, Max. Emily has 1 child, a 3-year-old boy, Noah. Our family gatherings used to be full of laughter, chaos, and the kind of teasing only sisters can get away with. That all changed recently. Emily has always been a bit overprotective and controlling, but she also prides herself on being a hands-on parent in a very strict sense. She believes that kids should always obey without question, stick to a rigid schedule, and that emotional expression beyond, "I'm happy," is a sign of weakness. I, on the other hand, lean toward a more flexible parenting approach, encouraging my kids to express their emotions, explore, and make small mistakes from which they can learn. The incident that sparked the conflict happened during a family weekend at my parents' house. We were there to celebrate my father's birthday. Emily arrived with Noah, who was in a stroller because she claimed it was for his safety and comfort, even though he is fully capable of walking. For context, Lily and Max ran around freely, exploring the yard and playing with our dog. At first, things were fine, but then it escalated. Noah started crying because he wanted to join the other kids in a game of tag. Emily immediately scolded him harshly, telling him to stop being dramatic and insisting he stay in the stroller. I intervened, asking Emily to let Noah play for a few minutes. I thought it was reasonable. He was upset, and the kids were just playing harmlessly. Emily snapped at me, accusing me of undermining her authority and claiming that I was spoiling him. I tried to reason calmly, explaining that kids benefit from social interaction, running around, and learning to navigate minor conflicts, but she refused to listen. She even started to raise her voice at me in front of my children and my parents, saying that my parenting style was reckless and irresponsible. My dad tried to diffuse the tension, but Emily kept going, listing all the ways she believed I was failing as a parent. I admit, I lost my temper. I told her that I would no longer remain silent when she berated my kids or dictated how they should behave in my presence. I said that I respect her choices as a parent, but that doesn't give her the right to impose her beliefs on my children or criticize me publicly. Emily stormed off with Noah, refusing to speak to anyone for the rest of the day. Things got worse after the birthday dinner. Later that evening, my mom came to talk to me privately. She expressed that she was disappointed in my reaction and that I should have let Emily have her way to avoid a scene. My dad, however, privately told me he understood why I stood up for my children and that he thought Emily overreacted. Emily's anger didn't subside. The next day, she sent a group text to our family members explaining her side, portraying me as the one who caused unnecessary drama. She claimed I was jealous of her parenting skills and that I disrespected her in front of her child. She demanded that my parents make me apologize to her. My parents didn't respond to the demand, which only seemed to fuel her resentment. Since then, Emily has been cold and distant. She refuses to allow my kids to spend time with Noah outside of necessary family events, and has even suggested to mutual friends that I am an unfit parent. This has created tension not only between us, but also among our friends and extended family members, some of whom are starting to avoid interactions to steer clear of the drama. I feel guilty because I didn't intend for this to escalate into such a prolonged rift, but I also feel justified. I was protecting my children from being emotionally manipulated and criticized by someone else. I believe that. Standing up for my children's right to play, explore, and feel their emotions is not wrong. Friends and coworkers have mixed opinions. Some say I should have backed down to maintain family harmony, while others tell me I did the right thing and that Emily was crossing boundaries. My parents are divided. My dad sides with me. My mom leans toward Emily's perspective, worried that I overreacted. Since the incident, I've been considering whether I handled things poorly. Could I have approached Emily more diplomatically? Should I have let her win to preserve peace? I worry that if I do apologize, it would imply that I was wrong, which I genuinely don't think I was. On the other hand, I hate the idea of losing my sister over this, especially since Noah and my kids used to be so close. I have tried reaching out calmly, suggesting we discuss our parenting differences without judgment, but Emily refuses. She won't even respond to my messages. Family gatherings have become stressful, and I'm constantly anxious about running into her or being accused of causing problems again. So, AITA for confronting my sister over how she was treating her child and my children, even though it caused a huge family conflict. I feel torn between standing up for my children and preserving the family bond. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of unresolved family issues. I, 32F, have a complicated history with my family, and I'm struggling with whether I'm in the wrong here. My sister, Emily, 30F, is getting married in a few months, and she has made it very clear that she expects me to be there. However, after years of family tension, I'm seriously considering skipping the wedding, and I'm unsure if that makes me the asshole. A little backstory. Our family has always been dysfunctional. My parents, while not abusive in a physical sense, were emotionally manipulative and extremely critical, particularly toward me. I was the responsible one growing up, while Emily was considered the golden child. Whatever she did was praised, and whatever I did was scrutinized. I graduated top of my class in college, got a good job, and moved out to pursue my career, but no matter what I achieved, my accomplishments were always downplayed or overshadowed by Emily's. This imbalance carried into adulthood. Emily has a history of being passive-aggressive and often makes subtle digs under the guise of humor. A few years ago, there was an incident that solidified my distance from the family. During a family vacation, Emily and my parents ganged up on me over something minor I said, twisting my words to make me seem selfish and inconsiderate. I tried to defend myself, and my parents didn't support me. Emily later laughed about it privately with other relatives, and that broke me. I realized then that being around them was emotionally exhausting and toxic. Since then, I've kept my contact with the family minimal. I occasionally speak to my parents and Emily on holidays, but I avoid long visits or gatherings where tension is likely. Emily has been planning her wedding for the last year and has made no secret that she wants me to play a significant role. She invited me early and explicitly asked me to be part of the bridal party. At first, I considered saying yes, but then I thought about the implications. The idea of standing there, smiling, and acting like everything is fine while feeling anger and resentment bubbling under the surface is unbearable. I expressed my concerns to Emily privately. I told her that I have unresolved feelings from our past, and that being in the wedding might be emotionally overwhelming for me. I also suggested attending the ceremony only without participating in the bridal party, or perhaps attending virtually. Emily's response was not understanding. She accused me of holding grudges, said I was overreacting, and that this was my chance to mend things. She insisted that if I truly loved her, I would put aside my feelings for one day to celebrate her happiness. I tried to explain that this isn't about refusing to celebrate her happiness, but about self-preservation. I have a history of anxiety and depression, and being in the spotlight at a wedding, especially one where I feel judged and scrutinized, could trigger a breakdown. Emily dismissed this entirely, telling me that I was selfish and inconsiderate. My parents also chimed in, saying that family is supposed to support each other and that skipping the wedding would be a betrayal. I'm now in a tough position. On one hand, I want to be there for my sister. Part of me still hopes we can have a relationship, and I don't want to create more family drama. On the other hand, I know that attending under these circumstances could be detrimental to my mental health. I also fear that pretending everything is okay will only make the tension worse in the long run. I've spoken to a therapist about this, and they advise that it's okay to set boundaries and prioritize my well-being. They emphasize that attending doesn't equate to resolving past trauma. I have considered alternative solutions, like sending a heartfelt gift and a letter expressing my support and love, or planning a separate celebration with Emily at a later date. I even offered to have a private dinner with her before the wedding too. Celebrate in a way that feels safe to me. But she rejected that idea, insisting that the wedding is the only way to show I care. I've also thought about the potential fallout. If I skip the wedding, I know there will be backlash. Relatives will likely take sides, and my absence could be portrayed as a deliberate insult. Emily has a wide circle of friends and family, and I fear the narrative will be twisted to make me seem cruel or uncaring. But I keep coming back to the fact that my own mental health and emotional safety are not negotiable. In preparing to potentially decline, I've tried to find a middle ground. I suggested attending the ceremony for just 30 minutes, enough to see her walk down the aisle and congratulate her afterward, but not to participate in any of the formalities. Emily said that would be insulting, claiming it would draw more attention to my issues and make everyone uncomfortable. I also offered to be part of the wedding in other ways, like helping with decorations, managing RSVPs, or assisting behind the scenes. She said no to everything that didn't involve standing up in front of the guests. I'm not blind to the fact that my decision will hurt her. I understand that weddings are emotionally charged, and my absence will likely cause disappointment and anger. But I can't shake the feeling that attending would be more harmful than beneficial for both of us. I would be pretending, and eventually, the emotional toll could lead to a major conflict during or after the wedding. I am conflicted. Part of me feels guilty for considering not attending. I've always imagined being there for milestones like this in my family, and I hate feeling like the villain. Another part of me feels relief at the thought of stepping back, setting a firm boundary, and avoiding a potentially toxic environment. I know that mental health is valid, and prioritizing it doesn't make me a bad sister. So, I'm here to ask, AITA for considering skipping my sister's wedding after years of unresolved family issues? I want to maintain a relationship, but I also don't want to jeopardize my well-being. Is it selfish to prioritize myself in a situation where societal and familial pressure is so strong? I would love honest feedback, especially from people who have had to navigate complicated family dynamics and set boundaries during major life events. I'm trying to do what's healthiest for me without completely cutting off my sister, but I don't know if that's possible in this case. Any guidance or perspective would be appreciated. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after he caused a huge argument at my family's Thanksgiving. So, I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emma, 28F, who has been dating her boyfriend, Kyle, 30M, for about a year now. Kyle and I have never really gotten along, and there have been multiple small incidents over the past year that made me uncomfortable, but nothing major until this Thanksgiving. We usually host Thanksgiving at my house. I live in a modest 3-bedroom townhouse, and I've always enjoyed making it cozy and welcoming for our family. This year, I had invited Emma and Kyle along with our parents, grandparents, and a couple of cousins. Everything was going fine. The food turned out well. Everyone was laughing and catching up. But then things took a turn. Kyle had been complaining about not being able to find parking when he arrived, which I brushed off. But then, during dinner, he started making snide comments about my house, the food, and my decorating choices. He said things like, "This is cute, but it's kind of cramped," or, "I guess this is fine if you're used to small spaces." I tried to ignore him, thinking maybe he was just tired or cranky, but it kept escalating. At some point, my sister asked him to stop, and he rolled his eyes and muttered something about me being overly sensitive. I got frustrated and told him that if he couldn't be polite, he could leave. He laughed and said, "Fine, maybe I will," in a way that made it sound like I was overreacting. My parents tried to mediate, but Kyle continued making backhanded comments, even calling the turkey decent but not impressive. It went on for about 15 minutes before my dad finally told him to knock it off or he should leave. The breaking point came when Kyle got up from the table, grabbed a plate, and went into the kitchen to get seconds. He started rearranging items on the counter while making remarks about how inefficient my kitchen layout was. I told him again, firmly this time, that he needed to respect my home. That's when he snapped at me in front of everyone, saying, "You're really controlling. No wonder Emma is with me. She probably wants someone who isn't bossy." I lost my temper and told him he was no longer welcome in my house and needed to leave. My parents tried to calm both of us down, but he left anyway, yelling about how I was unreasonable and judgmental. After that Thanksgiving, my sister called me crying. She said Kyle wanted to move in with her, and since she knew I didn't like him, she asked me not to tell anyone else in the family because she didn't want drama. I was caught off guard because I thought this was a temporary disagreement, but she made it clear she wanted him in her life long term, including in our family gatherings. A week later, she called again and asked if Kyle could crash at my townhouse for a few days while he searched for a new apartment. She said it would be easier for him than dealing with landlords and moving trucks. I told her absolutely not, explaining that he had been disrespectful in my home and that I wasn't comfortable having him stay under my roof. She tried to convince me by saying he would behave, that he was different when it's just us, and that it would only be a few days. I still said no. That's when things got really tense. Emma started sending me long texts and calling multiple times a day, arguing that I was being unreasonable, that families should stick together, and that I was being selfish. She brought up all the times I had been rude to her partners in the past, which I think was exaggerated. I reminded her that the difference is Kyle crossed boundaries, insulted me in my own home, and made me feel unsafe and unwelcome. She called me controlling and said our parents agreed that I should let him stay, which isn't true. Our parents stayed neutral, saying they understood both sides. Since then, Emma has been cold toward me. She only talks to me when necessary and refuses to come over unless I agree to a family compromise, which I interpret as letting Kyle come around more. I try to talk to her calmly about boundaries, but she said I was putting my feelings above family loyalty. Even my cousins have started asking me if I'm being too harsh, because Kyle has apparently been telling them that I'm the problem and that I hate him for no reason. It's stressful because I don't want to create a bigger rift in the family, but I also don't want to allow someone who has been verbally abusive to have access to my home. To make matters more complicated, a few weeks ago, Emma mentioned casually that she might ask my parents if Kyle could stay at their house instead. That made me feel frustrated because it seems like she's finding ways to bypass me entirely, even though she promised no drama. I want to maintain a good relationship with my sister, but I also feel like I need to stand my ground. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after the Thanksgiving argument and subsequent disrespect. I know families sometimes bend to accommodate everyone, but it feels like this is beyond just a small disagreement. I'm struggling because I want to be fair, but I also feel like letting him stay would cross a line I'm not willing to compromise on. Has anyone else been in a situation where a sibling wanted to involve a person you didn't get along with, and it caused family tension? I'm feeling torn between family loyalty and personal boundaries, and I want to handle this in a way that doesn't escalate further but still respects my own comfort. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of feeling overlooked and disrespected by my family. I, 32F, come from a family that, to put it lightly, has a history of favoring my younger sister, Emma, 28F, in nearly every aspect of life. Growing up, my parents constantly compared us. No matter what I achieved academically or professionally, it never seemed to matter. Emma could get a C on a school project, and it would be celebrated, while my grades were just expected. I tried to brush it off as typical sibling rivalry. But as I got older, it became clearer that it wasn't normal. I moved out at 22 for college and didn't return home except for holidays. My parents frequently guilt me for being distant or cold, but I honestly felt it was the only way to maintain my sanity. I've been very career-focused and am proud of what I've accomplished. I work in a demanding field and recently bought my first home. Despite all of this, my family rarely acknowledges these milestones. On the other hand, Emma's smallest accomplishments are blown up into major celebrations. Fast forward to last year. Emma got engaged to her boyfriend, Ryan. I tried to be supportive and even helped with some minor wedding planning when asked. I wasn't involved much because, as usual, decisions were made without consulting me. Invitations were sent out months ago, and I noticed right away that my role was minimal. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid or given any special responsibilities, despite being her older sister. My parents were clearly trying to make the day about Emma and Ryan, which is fair to a degree, but the lack of acknowledgement for me was noticeable and hurtful. The situation escalated when I realized my parents had given Emma an extravagant bridal shower at a luxury venue, while I never even got a small party when I got engaged 2 years ago. I brought this up gently, joking that maybe they could do something smaller for me, and my mother snapped, saying, "You're so dramatic. Emma deserves it, and you've had your time." That comment stung deeply. It felt like every effort I made to have my achievements recognized was dismissed or minimized. A few weeks ago, Emma asked if I could attend her bachelorette party. I told her I wasn't sure I could, given my work schedule and financial constraints. She said, "We'd really love for you to be there. It wouldn't be the same without you." It sounded genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my presence was more of a formality than heartfelt desire. I eventually declined, explaining that my workload was intense and that I couldn't take the time off. My parents didn't react, but Emma said she understood. I still felt a pang of sadness and guilt, but I tried to let it go. Last week, the final straw happened. I found out through a mutual friend that my parents and Emma were planning a surprise honeymoon gift for the couple that was extremely extravagant, way beyond what they've done for me or any other family milestone. When I questioned this directly, my mother said, "We just want to do something special for Emma. She's our daughter, after all." I snapped. I told her that it's been years of the same pattern, where Emma gets everything and I'm left feeling invisible. She told me I was being selfish and that I should just be happy for my sister. That felt dismissive, and it made me realize that nothing I said would ever make them acknowledge my feelings. After thinking long and hard, I made the decision not to attend the wedding. I wrote a detailed letter explaining my feelings, how I felt overlooked and disrespected, how every achievement of mine seems to be ignored, and how the constant comparison with Emma has hurt my mental health over the years. I told them that this decision wasn't about Emma or Ryan, but about my own well-being. I sent it via email, so there would be no confrontation, and I've been waiting anxiously for their response. Unsurprisingly, the reaction was explosive. My parents called me nonstop, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to angry accusations. My father said I was throwing away family and that I was punishing everyone for being happy. My mother accused me of destroying Emma's special day and said that I was being dramatic and selfish. Emma herself sent me a long message begging me to reconsider, saying that she didn't want me to miss her wedding and that my absence would hurt her deeply. I responded, reiterating that this wasn't about her, but about how I've been treated. I offered to meet with a therapist with my parents to discuss our family dynamics, but they brushed it off as unnecessary. I expected a mix of emotions, but the level of backlash has been intense. Relatives I've spoken to privately have expressed understanding, saying they've noticed the favoritism as well. A few friends have said I should stand my ground, but the guilt is heavy. I still love my sister and want her to be happy, but I can't help but feel that attending the wedding would be participating in the same dynamic that has caused me years of pain. I know my absence will be noticed, and I'm prepared for people to judge me. I'm struggling with the balance between family obligation and personal mental health. I've considered a compromise, like attending the reception only or sending a gift, but even that feels like it might not be enough to repair my relationship with my parents, who seem more concerned about appearances than addressing the underlying issues. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of feeling overlooked and dismissed by my family. I'm trying to prioritize my mental health, but I can't shake the fear that I'm overreacting or being unfair. The situation has left me feeling isolated, guilty, and unsure of how to navigate my family relationships moving forward. I don't want to hurt Emma, but I also can't continue to sacrifice my own well-being for a pattern that has lasted my entire life. I'm stuck in a place where every choice seems to carry emotional consequences, and I'm hoping for some outside perspective. Has anyone else dealt with this type of lifelong favoritism and family imbalance? How do you protect yourself without burning bridges entirely? I'm genuinely at a loss. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her new boyfriend move in with me after she got evicted, which caused a massive family fight. I, 39F, have a younger sister, Hannah, 32F, who has always struggled with managing money and maintaining stable relationships. She's intelligent and creative, but tends to be impulsive, often making decisions without thinking about long-term consequences. Over the years, I've tried to support her financially and emotionally, but I've learned that enabling her sometimes makes things worse rather than better. Recently, Hannah started dating a man named Daniel, 34M. From what I've observed, Daniel is charming but lacks responsibility and has been unemployed for several months. Hannah's financial situation has always been shaky, and Daniel's presence only made it more precarious. About a month ago, Hannah lost her apartment due to unpaid rent and called me in a panic, saying she and Daniel had nowhere to go. She asked if they could move in with me just until things got sorted out. I live with my husband, Tom, 41M, and our 2 children, ages 7 and 4. Our household is very structured, and we rely heavily on routines for the kids, work schedules, and personal space. I immediately felt uncomfortable with the idea of adding 2 adults who had no income and a history of financial instability. I explained to Hannah that while I wanted to support her, moving in with us permanently or even temporarily could create serious stress for our household. I offered alternative forms of help. I could assist them with finding a short-term rental, help cover part of the rent temporarily, provide groceries, and help Hannah update her resume and apply for jobs. I even suggested connecting them with local community resources that could help with housing and financial counseling. Hannah, however, was insistent that moving in with me was the only viable solution. She claimed it would solve all their immediate problems and said that families should always be willing to help unconditionally. The situation escalated when Hannah called our parents. They immediately took her side, saying I should let her stay and that my refusal was cruel. I tried to explain that I wasn't refusing to help. I was offering practical ways to support her without creating chaos in my household. I reminded them of past instances where Hannah stayed with family temporarily and ended up overstaying her welcome or causing tension. My parents accused me of being selfish and prioritizing my comfort over family loyalty. The breaking point came during a family gathering. Hannah and Daniel confronted me directly, shouting that I was being heartless, unsupportive, and controlling. Hannah accused me of trying to punish her for her financial mistakes and claimed I didn't care about her or Daniel. Daniel said I was judgmental and unfair. My parents joined in, insisting I needed to compromise and that family should always help in times of crisis. Tom tried to mediate, pointing out the potential disruption to our household and the emotional strain on our children, but his concerns were dismissed. Extended family members got involved. Some sided with me, recognizing the strain of hosting 2 adults with no income in a house with young children. Others sided with Hannah, arguing that I should simply do the right thing, and let them stay temporarily. Some suggested compromises, such as letting them stay in a guest room or basement, but I explained that even a short-term stay could easily turn into weeks or months given Hannah and Daniel's history of ignoring boundaries. I also emphasized that I had offered constructive support that didn't involve them living with us, which Hannah refused. After the confrontation, Hannah and Daniel left angrily. Hannah has since sent numerous passive-aggressive messages implying that I don't care about her, that I'm selfish. My parents continue to express disappointment, saying I should have just given in, and that my refusal has harmed family relationships. Holidays and gatherings have become tense, with some relatives quietly criticizing me and others sympathizing. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I acted responsibly by prioritizing the stability of my household and the well-being of my children. On the other hand, my decision has caused significant tension with Hannah and my parents. I have tried repeatedly to offer support without compromising my family, but my offers were rejected and misinterpreted as cruelty. I have considered allowing them to stay for a night or two, but past experiences make me worry it would quickly extend indefinitely and create more stress. I also fear it could reinforce a pattern of dependency that prevents Hannah from learning responsibility. I genuinely want to help my sister, but I cannot compromise my household, my children's routines, or my husband's peace of mind. I try to balance empathy with practicality, but my efforts have been rejected and caused conflict. I feel guilty about the rift, but I also feel justified in setting boundaries to protect my family. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her boyfriend move in during their financial crisis, even though it led to a massive family fight and upset our parents? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my adult niece live with me after she got kicked out, which caused a huge family conflict. I, 41F, have a niece, Sophie, 22F, who has always been a bit impulsive and dependent. She's my younger brother's daughter, and while I've always loved her, I've also learned over the years that helping her without boundaries often creates bigger problems. Sophie recently moved into an apartment with a roommate, but she didn't handle her responsibilities well. She missed rent payments, failed to pay utility bills, and ended up in a serious argument with her roommate that resulted in her being asked to leave the apartment immediately. Sophie called me, panicked, saying she had nowhere to go and asking if she could move in with me until she got back on her feet. My husband, Kevin, 44M, and I live with our 2 children, ages 8 and 5, in a relatively small house. We have strict routines for the children, a tight schedule for work, school, and extracurricular activities, and a home that depends on stability. I was immediately uncomfortable with the idea of adding another adult with no income and a history of irresponsibility into our home. I told Sophie that she could not move in permanently, but I offered alternatives. I could help her find a short-term rental, cover a portion of her temporary housing expenses, help her apply for jobs, and assist with creating a budget and plan to regain independence. I also offered to provide emotional support and practical advice while she navigated this situation. Sophie, however, was insistent that moving in with me was the only acceptable solution. She said that families should always step up and that refusing to let her stay was cruel and selfish. The situation escalated when Sophie called my parents, who immediately sided with her. They said I should let her move in and that my refusal was heartless. I tried to explain calmly that I was not refusing to help, but that allowing her to move in could disrupt my household, create stress for my children, and set a precedent for future dependency. I reminded them of Sophie's past behavior, including times when she had stayed with family temporarily and ended up overstaying or ignoring house rules. My parents accused me of being selfish and said I was prioritizing convenience over family loyalty. The conflict reached its peak during a family gathering. Sophie and my parents confronted me directly. Sophie accused me of being controlling and uncaring, claiming I was punishing her for her mistakes and trying to humiliate her. She said that I was failing as an aunt by refusing to offer basic support in a crisis. My parents reinforced her argument, saying I needed a compromise and that family obligations should take priority over rules or personal boundaries. Kevin tried to intervene, explaining that having an adult live in our home under these circumstances could disrupt routines and strain relationships. But Sophie dismissed his concerns, claiming I was overreacting. Some extended family members attempted to mediate. They suggested compromises, such as letting Sophie stay in a spare bedroom or basement for a short period. I explained that even a short-term arrangement could easily extend into weeks or months, given her history of overstaying and disregarding rules. I also stressed that I had offered other forms of support, including financial assistance for temporary housing and help with employment, all of which she had rejected. After the confrontation, Sophie left angrily and has since sent passive-aggressive texts and social media messages implying that I don't care about her or family. My parents remain upset, suggesting that I am selfish and cold-hearted for refusing to let her stay. Some extended family members support my position, recognizing that hosting an adult with no income and a history of irresponsibility could create long-term problems for my household, while others criticize me for not doing enough to help. Family gatherings have become tense, and the dispute is still ongoing. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I acted responsibly by prioritizing the stability of my household and the well-being of my children. On the other hand, my decision has caused significant tension with Sophie and my parents, and I feel guilty about the conflict. I try to provide constructive support without compromising my household, but my offers were rejected and misinterpreted as cruelty. I have considered allowing a very short-term stay, but past experience makes me worry it would quickly extend indefinitely, creating more stress and resentment. I want to support Sophie, but I cannot jeopardize my family's routine, my children's stability, or my husband's peace of mind. I feel justified in setting boundaries, but the resulting conflict has left me questioning whether I could have handled the situation differently. I've tried to balance empathy with practicality, but my efforts have been rejected and led to significant family discord. So, AITA for refusing to let my adult niece move in after she was evicted, even though it caused a massive family fight and upset my parents. AITA for refusing to help my brother move and causing a massive family fallout. So I, 28F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I live in a small apartment in a big city, work full-time as a software developer, and manage my finances carefully. My younger brother, Alex, 25M, is a free spirit who has bounced between jobs and cities for the last few years. Our relationship has always been a mix of love, annoyance, and mild resentment, because while I've been trying to plan for my future, he's been living in what I consider chaos. That said, I've always helped him out when it's been reasonable, whether it's lending money for emergencies or giving advice about life. Recently, Alex called me in a panic. He had been renting a small apartment in our hometown and suddenly got evicted because the landlord decided to sell the building. He had 3 weeks to move out and was asking me to help him pack, drive a van with his stuff, and essentially help him relocate to a city about 6 hours away, where he claims to have a job lined up. The first red flag was that he had not made any preparations. He had waited until the last minute, and apparently, all the moving companies in the area were fully booked. The second red flag was the sheer amount of stuff he owned. Alex has a habit of collecting things he might need someday and has never practiced minimalism or organization. He literally has boxes labeled stuff I forgot I had and random electronics. I have been to his apartment several times, and I can't even walk without stepping on old books, clothes, or broken furniture. When he asked me for help, I try to offer what I could reasonably do. I could help him pack a small portion of his things, maybe spend a day or two helping him organize, but I could not commit to the full move. I told him I couldn't take a whole week off work, spend hundreds of dollars on moving expenses, and risk my own back with heavy lifting. I also mentioned that I could help him research moving services, help him declutter, or even rent a smaller van and make a partial trip if needed. He blew up. He said I was being selfish and not a real sister, and that family should help each other. I explained that helping someone doesn't mean I have to ruin my own life, but he kept repeating the same accusations. Things escalated when my parents got involved. I live several hours away from them, and when they heard about the situation, they called me asking why I wasn't stepping up. I explained the limitations and even tried to suggest alternative solutions, like hiring a moving company, asking other friends who might have a truck, or even paying for a storage unit temporarily. My parents, however, seemed more angry with me than Alex, saying I had never been family-oriented and that I was letting him down in a time of need. I felt blindsided. I have helped them plenty of times, financially and otherwise, and I felt like they were attacking me unfairly. The day of the move, Alex attempted to start without me. He asked a couple of our mutual friends to help, but they could only manage part of it, and he ended up frustrated and exhausted. I offered once more to help just with heavy lifting on the day itself, but he refused, saying I had already proven where my loyalty lies. I didn't go. Over the next few days, the situation turned into a full-blown family drama. Alex called repeatedly, crying and accusing me of not loving him. My parents called, warning me that my relationship with the family could be permanently damaged. Some relatives even texted me, saying I should do the right thing or risk being cut off. I understand that family dynamics can be complicated, but I honestly felt like the expectation for me to completely handle the move was unreasonable. I have my own work, my own financial obligations, and frankly, I've seen him repeatedly rely on others without making plans for himself. It feels like my boundaries are being treated as a personal attack rather than a practical concern. Since then, the fallout has been intense. I haven't spoken to Alex much beyond a few short texts. My parents are still upset, and I have received indirect messages from other relatives that I am heartless and unsisterly. On the other hand, some friends have told me that I was justified in setting boundaries, and that helping doesn't mean destroying my own life. I genuinely feel torn. I love my brother, and I hate that he's in a stressful situation, but I also feel like being expected to sacrifice so much is unfair. AITA for refusing to fully help my brother move and standing by my boundaries, even though it caused a massive family conflict. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house, even though he claims it's temporary. I, 28F, have always been very particular about my home and my personal space. I live alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a city that's expensive and competitive to live in. Over the years, I've worked really hard to create a place that feels like mine, where I can unwind after long work days, host a few close friends occasionally, and just live on my own terms. I have a clear routine, and I like having control over my environment. My sister, Laura, 32F, has always had a more chaotic lifestyle. She's charismatic and fun, but has never really been responsible with money, work, or living situations. She's bounced between roommates and apartments over the years, often expecting people to accommodate her on short notice. Laura started dating Ethan, 30M, about a year ago. At first, I liked him. He seemed charming and polite, and they seemed genuinely happy together. But recently, Ethan has started talking about moving in with Laura, and that's when things became complicated. A few weeks ago, Laura called me in a panic. She had apparently gotten into a fight with her landlord at her current apartment over some minor repair issues, and her landlord was giving her the impression that she needed to move out within a month. She told me that Ethan didn't have a stable living situation himself. He rents a small room in a shared apartment, and the landlord there was threatening eviction too, and asked if he could stay with me temporarily until they could sort out a more permanent solution. I was caught off guard. I've had friends stay over for a few days during emergencies before, but having someone move in, even temporarily, is completely different. My apartment isn't that big, and I value my privacy deeply. I explained to Laura that I wasn't comfortable with having Ethan live with me, even for a short period. I told her it wasn't personal, but I need my home to remain my sanctuary. I offered to help in other ways. I could help him find temporary sublets, give him references for renting, or even let him crash for a night if there was literally nowhere else to go. I even offered to help Laura look for a new apartment. Laura didn't take it well. She said I was being selfish and that families should help each other. She argued that Ethan would only be there a week or two, that it wouldn't be a big deal, and that it's not like I don't have the space. She said she felt I was pushing her away and that I didn't care about her problems. I explained again that I don't feel comfortable and that having a stranger, even one I've met before, living in my home is not something I can compromise on. I also explained that my home isn't just space, it's my mental and emotional safe place, and allowing someone to stay indefinitely, even for what she calls temporary, would disrupt that. Things escalated when Ethan called me directly. He tried to persuade me himself, saying it's only for a couple of weeks, that he wouldn't cause any problems, that he's a quiet guy, and even offered to pay rent for that time. I appreciated that he was polite and tried to be responsible about it, but I still refused. I told him I wasn't comfortable with having anyone stay with me that long and that it wasn't negotiable. He seemed frustrated but said he understood. Laura didn't let it go. She called me repeatedly, sent long text messages, and even came by my apartment unannounced to try to convince me. At one point, she showed up with Ethan and said, "We just need a week, maybe 10 days. You'll see it's not a big deal." I had to tell them both very firmly that they were not welcome and that I was going to call the police if they refused to leave. They left, but left me shaken and angry. Since then, Laura has barely spoken to me. She's been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about family, selfishness, and people who can't step up for loved ones. Ethan hasn't contacted me again, which I consider a relief. My friends and a few relatives say I was right to set boundaries, but other family members are telling me that I should have been more accommodating, that I'm being rigid, and that I could have found a way to make it work. I understand wanting to help family, but I feel like my boundaries and comfort should also matter. I've let friends crash in emergencies. I've helped family in countless ways, but this situation is different. It's not about money. It's about letting a grown man move in with me without any real plan or timeline. I feel like if I had agreed, it could have set a precedent that I'm now stuck with, and that would create tension and resentment. I haven't spoken to Laura in over a week. I don't want to escalate further, but I'm worried I've irreparably damaged our relationship. I feel I did the responsible and honest thing, but I also can't shake the feeling that I might be overreacting. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my apartment temporarily, even though she claims it's just for a couple of weeks. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a major family secret. So this is a long one, and I'll try to get all the details straight. I, 29F, have always been close to my sister, Emma, 32F, but over the past few years, our relationship has become tense because of some deep-rooted family issues. Emma has always been the golden child in our family, and I was more or less the background child, the one no one really noticed unless something went wrong. I was used to it growing up, but it definitely affected my self-esteem. Despite that, I always try to support her, help her out, and be there when she needed me. A few months ago, Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Daniel, 34M, who is lovely, and I was genuinely happy for them. When she first told me, I congratulated her, offered help with the planning, and even suggested some ideas for the bachelorette party and wedding decorations. I thought things were going smoothly until a few weeks later when my mom called me in private and spilled a bombshell. Apparently, Daniel is actually my half-brother. I was stunned. According to my mom, she had an affair before I was born, and Daniel is the son of her lover from that time. I know it sounds unbelievable, but the timelines match up, and the resemblance between Daniel and me is undeniable. My mom had been keeping it secret for decades because she didn't want to ruin the family or upset Emma. I couldn't process this at first. I asked my mom to show me proof, birth certificates, old letters, anything, and she reluctantly did. Everything checked out. I even did a discreet DNA test, which confirmed it beyond doubt. After the initial shock wore off, I realized I had a huge moral and personal dilemma. My sister is marrying my half-brother. If I attend the wedding, I will be endorsing something that feels morally and biologically wrong. I try to think of how to handle it delicately. I considered telling Emma the truth immediately, but I know how it would devastate her. She has been dreaming about this wedding for years, meticulously planning every detail, and I knew she would never forgive me if I ruined it. Plus, there's a very real possibility she might have known nothing about Daniel's parentage either. I decided to approach my mom first. I told her that I could not attend the wedding without knowing that Emma knew the truth. My mom panicked, and said I should let it slide, and that revealing it now would ruin everything. She insisted that family should stick together and that my presence or absence wouldn't matter. I disagreed. I couldn't emotionally or psychologically sit through a wedding knowing the person at the center of it is my half-brother. I also couldn't in good conscience act like everything was normal. I confronted Daniel indirectly at first. I asked him some personal questions and noticed some strange reactions. He didn't seem to know he was my half-brother either, which complicated things even further. I eventually confirmed with my mom that he had no idea, which made me even more conflicted. How could I allow him to marry my sister without telling him the truth? And if I told him, it might cause the entire engagement to collapse. I tried to reason with myself and think about what attending would mean. I realized I would be constantly anxious, imagining scenarios that were both morally disturbing and emotionally painful. I would also be worried about the long-term consequences. If anyone found out I knew and stayed silent, would I be complicit? I felt trapped between protecting my sister's happiness and respecting my own mental health and moral boundaries. Ultimately, I decided to refuse to attend the wedding. I sent Emma a message explaining that I couldn't be there because of personal reasons and that it was nothing against her or Daniel. I didn't want to disclose the half-sibling thing just yet because I thought it might be too shocking and hurtful coming from me rather than from someone who knows the full story. My mom was furious. She called me selfish and irresponsible, saying I was making a scandal out of nothing and that Emma deserved to have me at her wedding. She said I was choosing my own discomfort over my sister's lifelong dream. Emma, understandably, was hurt and confused. She reached out to me multiple times, asking why I wasn't attending. I stuck to my vague explanation of personal reasons, but refused to go into details. Now, some relatives have started calling me cold and unsupportive. Others understand, but are urging me to at least attend the ceremony discreetly to avoid tension. I feel trapped. I've considered the possibility of telling Emma the truth gently before the wedding, but I fear it would destroy her emotionally and perhaps even Daniel's. I don't know if I have the right to reveal this secret, but I also feel like I can't live with myself if I knowingly let them marry without warning them about the biological and legal implications. There's also a legal concern in our country. Marriages between half-siblings are illegal. So technically, if the truth came out later, the marriage could be annulled or worse. Criminal investigations could follow. I've tried talking to a therapist, and they suggested I focus on my mental health and boundaries, but I still feel torn. I want to protect my sister, but I also cannot compromise my moral stance. I don't want to ruin her happiness, but at the same time, attending the wedding feels like endorsing a major ethical and legal violation. I'm literally the only person who knows this secret, and the burden is overwhelming. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding knowing that her fiancé is actually my half-brother. I feel like no matter what choice I make, someone's going to get hurt, and the pressure is unbearable. I've spent weeks weighing my options, but every time I imagine walking into that church, I feel physically ill. I don't want to be the villain, but I also cannot be complicit in something that feels fundamentally wrong. I haven't told anyone outside of my immediate family because I fear gossip and judgment, but I need to understand if I'm being unreasonable. Have any of you been in situations where attending a family event would cross a moral or legal boundary? How did you handle it without completely destroying relationships? I feel like there's no good outcome here, and every option seems to carry immense emotional consequences. I just want to know if my decision to step back from the wedding makes me an asshole or if it's justified given the circumstances. Has anyone experienced a situation where a shocking family secret made a seemingly ordinary celebration impossible to attend? How do you navigate protecting your own well-being while considering the happiness of others? I'm emotionally drained and need perspective before things escalate further. Please be honest. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of her new husband's behavior toward my family? I, 35F, have a cousin, Lisa, 33F, who I grew up very close to. We've shared holidays, vacations, and countless family events over the years. She recently got engaged to a man named Derek, 36M, who I had met a few times before their engagement. From the start, Derek seemed charming in public, but I noticed small things that made me uncomfortable, like dismissive comments about my parents and subtle jabs at other family members. At first, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe I was being overly sensitive. When Lisa announced the wedding, she sent out invitations for a large ceremony and reception. She invited me and my husband, and I initially felt excited to celebrate her big day. A few weeks after the invitations went out, Lisa asked if we could meet for coffee to discuss seating and planning. During the conversation, Derek was present. While Lisa was friendly, Derek made a series of remarks about my parents that were outright rude. He criticized their lifestyle, joked about their frugality, and said things like they seem old-fashioned and don't they realize how the world works now. My parents are kind, generous people who have always supported both Lisa and me, and I felt offended and shocked by the disrespect. I addressed it politely, saying, "I know you might be joking, but that comes across as disrespectful to my family." Derek laughed it off and said, "I'm just being honest. No need to get offended." Lisa didn't intervene much. She nodded but didn't correct him. I left feeling uneasy, not just about the wedding, but about the dynamic Derek might create if I attended. In the following weeks, he continued to make snide remarks to me at other family gatherings. Once, he criticized my job in front of other relatives, saying I should have aimed higher in my career. Another time, he commented on my husband's appearance in a jokingly insulting way. I tried to brush these off, but it became clear that his behavior was consistent and deliberately provocative. About a month before the wedding, I told Lisa that I was having second thoughts about attending because of Derek's behavior. I explained that I felt he was disrespectful to my family and me, and that attending would be uncomfortable. I emphasized that this wasn't about Lisa personally. I love her, but that I couldn't in good conscience sit through a celebration where a family member was being treated poorly. Lisa was defensive. She said I was overreacting and making it about something small. She reminded me that it was her day and implied that I should put my feelings aside. I tried to compromise, saying that I could attend if Derek promised to be respectful and that Lisa would intervene if he crossed boundaries. She said she couldn't control him and expected me to deal with it like an adult. I felt blindsided. The person who I expected to protect family harmony was asking me to endure repeated disrespect. I informed my parents and husband about the situation. They supported me, agreeing that Derek's behavior was inappropriate and that it was reasonable to skip the wedding rather than be subjected to repeated insults. My parents were disappointed to miss Lisa's wedding, but understood my perspective, saying that I shouldn't have to tolerate disrespect for the sake of appearances. Lisa, however, has been posting on social media about how hurt she is that I'm not attending. She's framed it as if I'm being selfish and choosing to hurt her day, rather than expressing concerns about her husband. Some mutual friends have reached out, suggesting that I should just let it go to preserve family peace, but I feel that would compromise my values and the respect my family deserves. I have considered whether I could attend the ceremony, but skip the reception or say a brief hello to Lisa alone. However, I worry that Derek would still interact with me or my family, and it would be impossible to avoid conflict entirely. I also think that attending under these circumstances would send a message that disrespect is tolerable, which I do not want to model for my husband or our children. So, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin Lisa's wedding because her new husband has been repeatedly disrespectful to my family and me. Even though she wants me there and other family members think I'm being rigid, I feel like I'm protecting myself and my family. But I also feel guilty for potentially hurting Lisa on her big day. I've tried to offer alternatives, sending a heartfelt gift, writing a personal letter, and planning a private celebration with Lisa at another time. I want to maintain my relationship with her, but I cannot ignore Derek's behavior. I am unsure if I am overreacting or if standing firm on my boundaries is the right choice, and I would like an outside perspective on whether my decision makes me unreasonable or justified. AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me after he got out of rehab. I, 35F, have always been the responsible one of my family. I work full-time as a nurse, live alone in a modest apartment that I've worked hard to make my sanctuary, and maintain a structured, calm lifestyle. My younger brother, David, 30M, has struggled with addiction for most of his adult life. Over the years, he's gone through multiple rehabs, relapsed several times, and gotten into trouble with the law a few times as a result of poor choices related to his substance abuse. A month ago, David completed his latest rehab program and called me, asking if he could live with me for a while to get back on his feet. My parents, who are getting older and stressed from all the drama over the years, also called and encouraged me to let him stay, saying it would give him a stable environment that might help him maintain sobriety. I love my brother, and I want him to succeed, but I also know that having him live with me could be incredibly stressful. I told David and my parents that I couldn't have him move in. I explained that my apartment is small, I rely on my routine to manage my work and mental health, and having someone with a history of relapse in my space could jeopardize both my well-being and the environment I've created. I also mentioned that I was willing to support him in other ways, like helping him find a sober living facility, attending meetings with him, or helping him set up a plan for therapy and job searching. David didn't take it well. He said I was being selfish and accused me of not believing in him, despite my repeated reassurances that I wanted him to succeed. He said that my apartment could be a fresh start, and that refusing him was making it harder for him to stay clean. I reminded him that my refusal isn't about doubting his intentions, but about protecting the environment that allows me to function and remain stable. My parents also started pressuring me. They said that family is supposed to support each other, and that turning David away could be detrimental to his recovery. They argued that he's tried rehab before, and the only reason he might make it this time is if he had a structured home environment, which I could provide. I reiterated that I could support him in other ways without having him live in my apartment. I even offered to help pay for a few therapy sessions or contribute to a short-term rental or sober living house. They said it wasn't the same, and my refusal was hurting the family dynamic. David then began reaching out to me constantly, texts, phone calls, even showing up at my apartment unannounced. At first, I tried to be polite, listening and offering encouragement, but it quickly became overwhelming. I started feeling anxious whenever my phone rang. I tried to set boundaries, telling him I would respond at certain times, but he became frustrated and said I was being distant. I considered possible compromises like letting him stay a weekend or having him come over just for the day to eat and talk, but I kept coming back to the same conclusion. Any amount of living with me, even temporarily, could disrupt my life and risk enabling patterns I don't want to encourage. I also thought about the possibility of tension escalating. If he relapsed while living with me, I would feel responsible, which could strain our relationship beyond repair. Some friends have told me that I'm justified and that boundaries are essential when supporting someone with a history of addiction. Others, including some family members, have suggested I'm being too rigid and that sometimes you need to make exceptions for loved ones. I feel guilty because David is struggling and I want to help, but I also can't compromise my mental health, routine, or home environment. Alex, my partner, supports my decision. He reminded me that helping doesn't always mean having someone live with you, and that it's possible to provide meaningful support in ways that don't jeopardize my stability. This makes sense, logically, but emotionally I feel conflicted because I worry that David will see my refusal as a lack of love or care. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me after rehab. I want to support him, but I also need to protect my own stability and boundaries. I feel torn between compassion and self-preservation. I've offered other forms of help, but my family and David interpret my refusal as rejection. I'm trying to balance caring for him with protecting myself, and every day it leaves me stressed, anxious, and guilty. I keep thinking that maybe I'm being too harsh or that I could figure out a way to accommodate him, but I honestly don't see a way that doesn't put me at risk of emotional burnout or create tension in my own home. I want to support his recovery without compromising my life, but it feels like no matter what I do, I'll either be letting him down or sacrificing my own well-being. I'm stuck between being a responsible sister and maintaining my own stability, and I don't know if that makes me the asshole. AITA for potentially ruining my family vacation because I wanted to set boundaries with my in-laws. So a bit of background first. My husband, Jake, and I have been married for 6 years. We have 2 kids, Lily, 5, and Max, 3. Jake's parents, Linda and Tom, live about 2 hours away, and we try to see them every couple of months. Generally, visits are fine, but things tend to get tense because they are extremely controlling and have very rigid ideas about parenting and proper behavior. A few months ago, we were planning our summer vacation. Jake suggested we go on a family trip with my parents and his parents. My parents are pretty laid back, so I was fine with it. Jake and I had a long discussion about it beforehand because I knew his parents would try to take over. We agreed that we would try to enforce our own rules and schedules with the kids, but we didn't want to outright exclude them. Fast forward to the trip. We rented a large cabin by a lake for a week. Initially, things were fine. My parents were chill, helping out when needed, and generally just enjoying the kids. But Jake's parents immediately started acting like they were running the place. They rearranged the furniture without asking, started telling us what the kids could and couldn't do, and even critiqued the meals I had prepared. The real breaking point came on the third day. Lily wanted to go swimming in the lake in the morning. I told her that she could, but only if she wore a life jacket and I would supervise. Jake's parents insisted she didn't need it because we survived as kids without floaties. They started arguing with me, saying I was being overprotective. I tried to stay calm, explaining that Lily is only 5 and has never swum in a lake before. The conversation escalated, and before I knew it, we were all raising our voices. Later that day, Max wanted to play with a small toy boat he brought. His grandpa, Tom, grabbed it and started showing Max how to sail it, but then he refused to let Max play with it on his own because he didn't know how to handle it responsibly. I tried to intervene, reminding Tom that Max is 3 and part of learning is experimenting, but he shrugged me off. I could feel my frustration building, but I kept reminding myself to stay calm for the kids' sake. By day 4, I was exhausted. I felt like I couldn't enjoy the trip at all because I was constantly policing my in-laws' behavior. I had tried dropping hints to Jake that I needed him to back me up, but he kept trying to mediate instead of taking a firm stance. That evening, we had a family dinner, and the argument over Lily's swimming incident started again. This time, I decided to set a boundary. I told Linda and Tom that while I appreciated their enthusiasm and advice, Jake and I are the kids' parents, and the rules regarding safety, food, and daily schedules are ours to enforce. I said that I would expect them to respect our decisions, or I would have to take more direct measures to prevent interference. They were visibly shocked and offended. Linda started crying, saying I was being ungrateful and overreacting, and that I was turning Jake against them. Tom said I was ruining the vacation and accused me of trying to control everyone. Jake tried to calm everyone down, but I could tell he was frustrated too because he hates conflict. After that dinner, the atmosphere changed completely. His parents barely spoke to me directly and only engaged with the kids when I wasn't looking. Jake's parents spent the next couple of days sulking or sitting separately, which made everything awkward. My parents, on the other hand, were very supportive and tried to help defuse tensions, but it was clear that the dynamic had shifted. By the last day, Jake admitted to me that he had been feeling caught in the middle the whole time. He said he wished I had approached the situation more delicately, but he also agreed that boundaries needed to be set. On the drive home, he suggested that maybe in the future, trips involving both sets of parents might need to be avoided or structured differently. Now, here's why I'm questioning myself. Some family members, especially Jake's siblings, are upset. They say I blew up the vacation over nothing and that I should have just let them have fun with the kids. Others say I was right to set boundaries and that the tension would have only grown if I hadn't spoken up. Jake seems neutral, but a bit resentful about how uncomfortable the rest of the trip became. I honestly don't feel like I overreacted, but the fallout has been stressful. I don't want to damage my relationship with his parents, but I also feel like constantly letting them override me isn't fair to me or the kids. I'm torn between thinking I did the right thing for our family and feeling guilty for making the vacation unpleasant. So, AITA for setting boundaries with my in-laws and potentially ruining the vacation? Or should I have just tolerated their interference for the sake of peace? AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me indefinitely, even though he says I owe him after I inherited my parents' house? This is going to be a long story, but I want to explain everything so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 34F, recently inherited my parents' house after they passed away within a short period last year. My younger brother, Kevin, 28M, has always struggled with stability. He bounces from job to job, rarely saves money, and has had difficulty maintaining long-term housing. Despite this, we were close growing up, and I've always wanted to support him without enabling him. A few weeks after the funeral, Kevin called me in a panic. He had been evicted from his apartment due to unpaid rent and said he had nowhere to go. He asked if he could move in with me temporarily until he figured things out. At the time, I was overwhelmed with grief and unsure how to handle the situation, but I wanted to help. I agreed, thinking it would only be a few weeks. I told him clearly that he needed to actively look for work and a new place, and that my home could only be a temporary solution. Kevin agreed. The first week was manageable. Kevin stayed in the guest room, helped minimally around the house, and seemed motivated to get back on his feet. I even helped him with resumes and job applications. But after 2 weeks, nothing had changed. He started spending the majority of his days at home, playing video games or browsing the internet. He missed interviews without telling me, made no effort to contact landlords, and started leaving dirty dishes in the sink. He also began inviting friends over without asking and using my car for errands. I tried having a serious conversation with him. I reminded Kevin that this arrangement was temporary and that he needed to find a new place soon. I explained that living with me indefinitely was not possible and that I had responsibilities at work and my personal life and toward my household that could not be disrupted. Kevin became defensive and said I was being selfish and unsupportive. He insists that because I inherited the house, I owe him shelter indefinitely and that refusing is a betrayal of family. The situation has caused significant tension. I live with my partner, Alex, 35M, and our schedules and privacy have been disrupted. Alex is frustrated because the house feels constantly crowded, and he's stressed by Kevin's lack of consideration for routines or household responsibilities. Our home life is tense, and small things like cooking dinner or having quiet time have become logistical challenges because Kevin disregards rules we've clearly established. I have tried multiple compromises. I offer to pay part of rental deposit, help him find a short-term sublet, and even extend his stay by a week if he actively pursued job applications and apartment hunting. He initially agreed, but did nothing. Every time I bring up a timeline or requirements, he frames it as me abandoning him and says I am treating family like tenants. He repeatedly mentions that I owe him because of everything he's done for me emotionally in the past and implies that I am selfish for prioritizing my own household. Kevin has also involved other relatives, telling them I am refusing to help family in need and painting me as heartless. Some relatives have called to pressure me, insisting that family obligations should take precedence over my own home and that I am being unreasonable. I've explained my position, but they dismiss it and suggest I should simply let him stay to avoid family conflict. I feel torn. I do love my brother and want to support him, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help him. It would enable him to avoid responsibility and create resentment for both of us. I've provided support emotionally, financially, and practically in other ways, and I want to maintain a healthy relationship. Allowing him to live here indefinitely under these circumstances is unsustainable and could permanently disrupt our household. I'm also concerned about precedent. If I allow him to stay indefinitely without contributing, he may continue to rely on me for basic needs, which could affect my relationship with Alex and create long-term tension. I've tried to maintain clear boundaries, offered alternatives, and been supportive in ways that don't compromise my household, but he refuses to take responsibility. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me indefinitely, even though he insists I owe him after I inherited my parents' house. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.